Hey everyone, welcome to episode 36 of the Take Care of Yourself podcast. I'm Jolie,
And I'm Tara.
and uh, here on this podcast, we chat about books and self care and all sorts of fun things like that. So, how are you doing this week, Tara?
I am doing good. It is you guys are listening to this not the week that it is, but yeah, I am getting used to like not having a foster care placement and also like any minute we could get one. And so I thought this week I wanted to talk with you about, because it's something we've messaged about a little bit, the Strengths Finder like test and book I was reading. So this is a book I picked up like the week before we got our placement, and I read it and I loved it and I took all these notes, and then like the baby blew up my brain in my life, so we never got to talk about it. But I think we messaged a little bit about it, and you've taken the quiz too.
Yeah, I took it. I can check my email. I took it 2 years ago.
Oh wow, okay. So what we're talking about is there's a book. There's actually several books. The first book that came out is Now Discover Your Strengths. It is a book by the Gallop organization. They're the polling group that does a lot of polls about a lot of different things. And if you go to strengthsfinder.com, you can find you can like take the test to find your strengths profile. And in all of their research, especially about workplaces and in big corporations, the main point of all of this is that people do better when they focus on their internal, naturally occurring strengths than when they try to focus on their weaknesses. So, a lot of times we have the feeling, especially if you read self-help books, that like you should get better at the things you're bad at, as opposed to building a career and a job and a life around the things that you're great at, like your strengths. And actually, I think Jolie, you and I have had like conversations, maybe even on the show, about like, do you focus on your weaknesses or do you focus on your strengths? Like, because if you are just always focusing on your strengths, are you letting yourself get off like too easy? Should you try to be like a better person? And what the Gallup, and it's been like hundreds of thousands of people in different organizations, and they were really concerned with job satisfaction. It's kind of how they came around to strengths, is by looking at like what people with high job satisfaction had in common. And one of the things they find that is like amazing is that you're more likely to grow in your position or your job or your career or your business if you are focused on your strengths, and also you're less likely to get burnt out, and you're more likely to say that you feel satisfied in your job if you feel like it uses a bigger percentage of your strengths, which just makes sense, right? Like if you do a job that you're not naturally suited for, you feel bad about the job you're doing. Like it's not fun to do, and it's like hard all the time. And that's what they're saying, by focusing on your strengths you can make it easier. And since a lot of us own our own businesses, we make our own job description up, both by the kind of business we choose to have, but also by the like way we decide to do our business and how we decide to get help. So for example, I do a lot of videos and audio stuff, but I one of my strengths is not attention to detail, and so editing is like not for me. So I've chosen to get help in those areas so that I can focus on my strengths. So like in your own business, I feel like you have to do a million things that maybe you're not great at, and instead of spending all your time and energy trying to get better at the stuff you're not great at, like for me, it could be editing, for you, it could be bookkeeping, or even marketing or writing or photography, you can get help with the areas you're weakest at and do the thing that matters most for your business. And also make sure you're building a business that like highlights what you're best at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
So, do you want to talk about our strengths, or do you want to talk about like, I want to hear from you how your business is built on your strengths. But I think to do that, we probably have to talk about your strengths first.
Yeah. So my strengths are the top one is achiever, and then it's competition, focus, activator, and relator. And what that basically means is I'm really good at self motivating and getting things done, and I'm competitive, and I also value relationships with others.
Yes. So maybe I should explain too, like the thing about strengths as they define them is that every person's strengths are unique and they're enduring. So these aren't like just personality traits. They're like things that and they do a whole description of what it means to be good at something. Like maybe you have talent in the area, or maybe you like your brain likes doing it, so you've gotten better just like through your life because it's something you tend to do. And I think you can see this with your kids, right? Like
Hmm.
they're getting stronger in areas that they like doing better. And yeah, so when you they're enduring. Like they're going to stay with you throughout your life, even if your jobs change. Typically, you're going to do best in life situations that like have you use them, but they're unique. Like very few people have the same like top 5 strengths,
Yeah.
even though the strengths like description are true for everybody who has them. We all have them in like different quantities.
Right.
Yeah. So how does your job like reflect your strengths? Have you thought about that?
Yeah. See, I don't. Okay, so I didn't feel
I
like
can tell you.
Yes, you can tell me because when I took this quiz and I was like, you've not told me anything I didn't know about myself. Like, but like, so I don't see like how they relate because I'm just like, this is just common sense. Like, I work hard and I work for myself. Like, and I'm just like, so yeah, I would love to
Right.
hear how you think they apply to my business.
Okay, so you have to tell them to me one more time. I'm going to write them down
Yep.
while you tell me.
Okay, so achiever,
Okay.
competition,
Okay.
focus,
Ooh, that's a good one. All right.
activator.
And relator.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have activator and relator too. So the book, the Now Discover Your Strengths book, like explains what I said about how the strengths work. And then it also talks about how you can use strengths like in an organization, which is I think super helpful if you have a family and you're wondering like how can we balance family tasks. If you look at strengths, you can kind of apply that. But then it also has a page for every strength. And so I'm just going to look at achiever real quick. Um, so, your achiever theme helps explain your drive. Achievers describe a constant need for achievement. You feel as if every day starts at zero. By the way, when I took this test in college, because I took a personality psych class, this was my top strength too. It doesn't show up in my strengths anymore. And I think it's because I was in a situation in life where achiever was like a necessary strength, right?
Hmm.
Like, I had a scholarship I had to keep in order to pay for college. And so, like, I focused on this strength more than like in my day-to-day life I do now. Um, you feel as if every day starts at zero. By the end of the day, you must achieve something tangible in order to feel good about yourself. And by every day, you mean every single day. Work days, weekends, vacations. Does that feel true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
we know that about me.
No matter how much you feel you deserve a day of rest, if the day passes without some form of achievement, no matter how small, you'll feel dissatisfied. This is definitely in my top 10. You have an internal fire burning inside of you. It pushes you to do more and achieve more. So here's the thing that I think is like important about this is that you should realize not everyone has this strength. So when you're working with somebody in your life coaching or your business coaching, like it can be frustrating that other people aren't like bringing this to the table and they literally don't have that strength. So what you can do in your business and what you do in your business is you make lists so that you can look, and even though you're a rebel, you still need to have that feeling that you've marked something off the list. And I think you found a good way of working with that I feel like when we first started working together, when I first met you, like when you first joined the starship, you weren't having that sense of achievement in the same way. And so you've built your business and kind of like your day or your plan so that you're getting that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes
'Cause
sense. I think, when I started, like, first of all, I had no clue, like, what to do each day and, like, didn't do to-do lists. Like, I would just make big, long lists, and I would get nothing on them done, and I would just feel crap about myself all the time. Whereas I think now I've been really good about just giving myself, like, one task for a day. Like, each day has to have like a theme or like one like this day is podcast editing day or this day I'm going to like do my coursework for the certification I'm doing. Like I just need like one thing a day and I'm like you only have to get that one thing done. And I sometimes I still find myself like being hard on myself like thinking, "Oh, you didn't get anything done today." But I'm like, "No, you did. Like you got your one thing done and that's really important and that's good enough."
yes, and like that whole thing you just described is basically like a reframing that you taught yourself in order to make your business work for you.
Yes.
And if you didn't know that about yourself and you just beat yourself up for not doing enough and you didn't realize, hey, this is a strength. Like this can actually push me to achieve more than most people achieve in a year. I'm like doing it a week. So it's a good thing if I keep it under control. And the way to keep it under control is to like mark things off and have a theme and like all of that. Like that's super um you've like built your day without even realizing it, right? Because like you were saying, well, this isn't teaching me anything new, but you can see like the way that you did it also will help you in your coaching, like help other people recognize like they're turning something that's a strength into a weakness by using it to like beat themselves up for, which is what I see a lot with a lot of these strengths. People are like, oh, I know that about myself and I don't like it about myself, right?
Yeah, I would say that's actually really true. I did think when I first read the list, I was like, "You've just listed, like, all the things, like, that I'm like, are worst about myself." Like, I'm driven and I'm ambitious and, like, I work too hard and, like, I get super focused on one thing and, like, forget about everything el like, you just, like those are all my insecurities. Like, great, that was amazing.
You're like, thanks for that, Strengths Finder. This is so when we took the Enneagram quiz this morning, like that's how I felt reading my Enneagram result. I was like, ugh, I'm the worst. Like I hate this about myself. This is often like part of the reason these tests can be helpful or just these any personality trait or the four tendencies or whatever, because you recognize yourself and then you can see like what are you avoiding about yourself and what are you also like pushing aside when you could be working with it, right?
Yeah,
So like competition, you have set the goal to have you're doing a video series about a six-figure business. Like that is an awesome way of using competition with yourself and keeping you from looking at other people, because it's the hard thing about having your own business is that like it's not comparable to anybody else's. Like
yeah,
what you're doing and the way you're doing it and the audience you're doing it with is nothing like what other people are doing, even though I know it must be easy to look at other people and like compare,
right.
right? But they're
But
not good comparisons, so it makes you like crazy.
yes, that's accurate.
And the other like so focus like you are so all of these three together I think have helped you kind of build your best most productive workday, right? When you work with those strengths as opposed to like, so it's probably super hard for you to get stuff done when, if you're at home with your kids,
Yeah,
because kids are constant focus interrupters. Like that's just, they live in a world with much shorter attention spans. And so like you used knowing that you need that focus, like to have your place where you're working now.
yeah,
It's
that's
like
true.
all things that like instead of fighting these strengths, you decided like I'm gonna build a work day around them and like a goal for myself where I'm just competing with myself into it. And that's what's keeping you going.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
funny because so again we were talking about enneagrams this morning and part of my trait is that I'm like hyper aware of my weaknesses and like I think everyone should work on their weaknesses and improve themselves. But the other part of my personality is we talked about this last week, I think when we talked about social media, is that I devalue what I'm good at. Like that's this whole thing in a nutshell. Like I read my strengths and completely devalued all of them. And I was just like, those
Right.
are rubbish strengths. And it makes so much sense because I think all of my traits put together also mean I'm like pretty efficient. Like I get things done, but
Mhm.
I've always beat myself up for like not working hard enough or like I don't work 8 hours. Like on most days I do like a good maybe 3 to 4 hours, but like because I get stuff done and like I check off my 3 to-dos and then like energy wise I'm drained like cuz I've done
Right.
the work of a full
Right.
day in like 3 hours. But then I beat
Right.
myself up for that. Instead of being like, "Jolie, you're so, good at getting stuff done and you're
Amazing.
quick." Right? Like you just cranked out like an 8-hour day in 3 hours. Like that's amazing. Enjoy the rest of the day off. I beat myself up for like not sustaining that energy all throughout like the 8 hours. Um,
Right. And so A, what you said about not like valuing your strengths is everybody does it because they think, well, that comes easily to me. So they assume it comes easily to everybody. But the more you work with and talk with other people, you realize, like, oh no, like that's actually super hard for some people. Like, focus, you and I both have worked with people who, like, focus is not one of their strengths.
mhm,
So they cannot just pick a project and complete the project. And that's a real it's hard to have a business without having focus, you know?
Yeah.
But then the other thing is like what you said about, oh, my mind just went, oh, right. Like you get stuff done in a short period of time. Most people are probably listening and thinking like, ugh, I wish I could get an 8 hour day done in 3 hours. Instead, I like work for 20 minutes and then I have to get up and do something else. And then I come back and I work, but then like I get distracted and I do something else. And like they haven't yet figured out how to work with their strengths to be effective.
Yeah.
And like your strengths all lead to like kind of a hyper effectiveness,
Yes.
but then the downside of that is they lead to like hyper judgmental. Are you doing enough?
Yes. Because I'm competitive and I'm always like, and I'm, yeah, and I'm always trying to strive for better. And so, like, those two things, like, it's always like, it can easily become, you're not enough, you're not good enough, this is where you want to be, and you're so far from it. And it's taken like a lot of work to get to the place where, like, valuing what I do and like valuing my strengths and I am enough and like it doesn't matter how many hours I work, like if I'm doing the task that I need to do and like I'm bringing in money, like that's all, like that's fine. Like the goal was never to work 40 hours a week. Like that's never ever been a goal of mine. But I
Right.
set it up as like a standard that I had to hit. And it was like, wasn't the point of working for myself to like not have to adhere to someone else's hours?
Exactly. And Jay and I were just talking about this because nobody who works in an office works 8 hour days.
Right.
Like he has a boss that makes everybody be in the office for 8 hours every day. Like they have to be at work for 40 hours, even though they could get their job done in 20 to 30 hours. And so they do get their job done in 20 to 30 hours because like all the in between time, they're like poking around Facebook, like he's reading articles, like he's talking, like he has these like long protracted games and jokes with his coworkers that when he describes them to me, I'm like, that seems like it would have taken you like a half hour, 45 minutes. And he's like, yeah. Right. And he's doing that at like 10 a.m. because his job, if it actually took all 8 hours, he would be working all that time to get it done because they have deadlines with his state that you can't miss or you. So like it's the massive deadlines and yet it doesn't take that much time. And so and I never worked 8 hours when I worked an office job. So I had to remind myself of that when I started working for myself is I've never in my life, the exception being like waitressing and like customer service like McDonald's,
Mhm.
because you're literally standing there. But in most thinky, creative, intellectual jobs, you're not working the whole 8 hours
Yeah,
at all.
same. I think I read, actually, and this is kind of what helped me. It was when I was looking at Pomodoro techniques and stuff. Most people can do actually 4 hours of work a day, like solid. And I think, but my issue is I get focused and I will do all those 4 hours in one go. Like if I'm especially
Right.
really into something that I'm passionate about, like I'm just hyper focused and it all gets done and I forget to
Right.
eat and I forget to drink. But then I'm
Yes.
like exhausted and I'm thinking like, oh, I should keep going. And there have been times where I've
Right.
worked like 16-hour days, just
Oh
like
my gosh.
start to finish. Cause I'm just, when I get excited about something, I'm like, I want to crank it out right away. But then I take like
Yeah.
a week off because I'm exhausted.
Right. I know, and it's funny because I'm glad we're talking about this because I am the same way. Like I don't work more than 3 to 4 hours on a good day. So if I'm having like cramps or emotional stuff, it'll be like an hour, but I'll get tons of stuff done in that hour. You know what I mean? Like there are
Yeah.
very few tasks. Like podcasting is actually one of the things you have to do like in real time. It takes as long as it takes, but like all the other stuff, if it's focused, it can be done so quickly. And I actually like spent a couple years trying to like boil down my business to the things that can be done in short periods of time that are focused because why not?
Yeah.
Like we're our own bosses,
That's
you
so
know?
funny. So I got Ian, my husband, this book. It's called like the Bullet Journal Method, and Ryder Carroll wrote it. He's the creator of the Bullet Journal, and it just came out like October. It just came out. So I got my husband that book for his birthday because I really think the bullet journal system would help him. And I was reading through it, and there was this exercise that you start before you set up your bullet journal, where you write down what you're working on, what you should be working on, and what you want to be working on. And like Ian had like lists for all of them. And I was like, I don't understand this. Like, I was like, I'm working on stuff. It's what I want to be working on. And like, I don't, like, there's nothing on my should be. Like, I'm doing what I want and what I should be. Like, I just didn't
Right.
understand the
Right.
exercise. I think another one of like the side effects of my skill set is that I'm also very good at just identifying like what needs to be done and what's like people get so wrapped up in feeling like all of these things have to be done. Like they'll feel like I have to post on Instagram and I have to, and I'm like, no, like I don't actually have to do. Like I am very aware of
Right.
what actually has to be done. Like your podcast has to be edited. It goes up. Like there are things that have to be done. But like I've also set up my business so that very few things have to be done. Like if I
Right.
want to take a week off, like I can pretty much set things up that I can take a week off and nothing falls apart. So I
Right.
think that's another one of my skills is that like when I just don't get bogged down by like a lot of super what's that
That's
word?
that focus though. That's
Yeah.
that focus because all that like unnecessary stuff like that floats around a lot of us, you just like are not seeing it until it's time for it to
Yeah.
like be a priority and then you focus on it.
When I am like in alignment with my strengths and in a good place because it
Yeah.
absolutely I have moments where I beat myself up for a bunch of stuff, but that's when I recognize like I'm not being my best self and I've probably too stressed and I've probably not like valued self-care enough and I've not been like when I get in that bad place, then yeah, I get unfocused and like unmotivated and distracted by everything. But when I'm at my best and when I've set up my environment so that it's the best for me and I'm like taking care of my emotional health and my physical health, like feeding myself, then like all of my strengths kind of align. And I think like I am productive and, not bogged down by a bunch of tasks.
Totally. Totally. I love that. The other two tasks or strengths we didn't talk about are actually the strengths we have in common, which is activator and relator. So those activator is like my top strength, which again, I think it's because when I take the quiz, like where am I in my life? So when I was in college, it was all about like my personal achievement.
Hmm.
Activator is about inspiring other people to take action. It's actually moving. So in a corporate setting, it would be like we get our teams to like do stuff, right? Or our coworkers. But like in our businesses, it's more like the people we're coaching or kind of our audience, um, inspired to take action. Like
Yeah.
to not, it's all about moving both in our own lives and in other people's, like just ideas into actual action taking. And we both are like, this is our big focus when we work with people. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, but you got to do stuff. like, we're not like, oh, just tell me all your dreams and like, we'll just talk about what you want to do forever, right? Like,
Right.
yes, this is why we were able to do this podcast because we like had the idea and then we're like, okay, we're doing it this week.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
that's
true.
that's activating. And
Yeah.
the first sentence in the description is like, when can we start? This is a recurring question in your life. You're impatient for action. Uh, only action can make things happen. Only action leads to performance. Once a decision is made, you cannot not act. Right?
Yeah.
And this is part of your focus thing too. And this is why I think that we're both helpful for other people because if we work with people who activator isn't one of their strengths, we can kind of move it along. We
Hmm.
can like help them start to take the action based on their own strengths. We can be that activation for them. And then relator, which we also both have in common, is it's not just like relationships with people, but it's working together towards goals together. Like so and this I realized when I look back on my business, even though for years and years my business was only me until I started working with doTERRA and working with a team of people, even though it was only me, it was all related to how I could help my people I had already been working with. So like it was other yarn makers that first asked me questions that led me to my first class. It was my first class students that led me to put together like the proto starship. And like everything I've ever added to my business has like the Map Your Business book, which has been my best-selling book of my two. But it was because people were like, "Can you make a printed version of this?" And I thought, "Well, you should just print it at home." And they're like, "No, we would pay you to make a printed version of this." And I was like, "That seems like a big hassle." And we did it in like 2 weeks because it was not something like I was dying to do, but it mattered to me that it would help my people. And like if I ever feel like I don't have my people, like I don't really have any goals in my business. Like my goals for my business are really just do more of what will help my people.
Yeah.
And my people are just kind of whoever has shown up for me over or with me over the years and is working on their business kind of with me and with my in my programs. So when I realized that, I was like, oh, like it's easy from the outside. It seems like it's about what I wanted, but it's like really about me helping other people reach their goals. And so I create and I sell and like I make a living of helping other people reach their goals. So I'll create whatever I can create to help make that happen.
So it's interesting that you brought that up because it was one of those things like I didn't realize people would do it any other way, but I feel like I've never created anything in my business that wasn't to help. Like, you know what I mean? Like the whole reason I started a business was I created the tech editing course because people kept asking me like, how do I become tech editors? And I wanted to help them, so I made a course. And then like they needed marketing classes, so I made marketing classes. Like, and now
Right.
it makes sense that I've ended up in coaching because like it's the absolute thing I love the best is helping people. But like I don't know if I would know how to do a business in any other way.
Right. Well, I think a lot of businesses first make a product and then like they might make a product for the market, but I think what's different about how you and I work is that we like the whole way our thought is like we're thinking of like individual people we're
Yeah.
going to work together with through, and this is probably why we teach and coach versus a product, right?
Yeah. Like I
Like a
started with
device.
audience first and then was like, these people need help. Am in a position to help them. So let me do that. And
Right.
it's also reminded me like the times I felt most disconnected and like fed up with my business is when I've lost the connection. And I think I
Yes.
was talking about this on Instagram or even in the last episode, like building community is like such an important thing. And if I ignore that and if I just am like, try to, because a lot of people are like, automate your business and your business doesn't need you, step away from it, like put in all these systems. And whenever I try to do that and like make things more systematized and remove myself from the process, like I feel really bad, like, and just not happy with anything.
Right. Yeah, because you need that relation in order to like keep going. And the other thing about relator is that some of them, like there are other interpersonal strengths that are like working together with people, but some of them are more like group or team focused and relator is more like one-on-one or like I think of it as like you might have an audience and they might be connecting with you, but you want to actually like have a conversation.
Right.
Right? You don't want it to just be like, oh, I say something and 30 people all give me like a impersonal response. You'd rather have like one person who then it turns into a conversation. And what you want to do is like, which is what we are talking about in the last episode about social media, you want to take that conversation and make it more public so it can help more people.
Yeah.
But you don't want to stop having that like actual one-to-one. This is why I always go back to Q&A. And for my podcast is like I'd rather have somebody's really specific question that I'm answering than just like a topic to talk about.
Hmm.
And so even in my topic podcast, they often start with somebody having had asked me a specific question and I answer that specific question, not all the different ways I could think about that.
Yeah.
Like because it needs to feel connected to another human for
Hmm.
it to seem real to me.
Yeah. So what were your other strengths?
So activator was my top strength. And then my next two are hold on, I'm getting there. Oh, futuristic and strategic. So, futuristic means you are always thinking about the future and like helping, like you're casting a vision for the future at all times, as opposed to getting bogged down in the realities of now or in like what went wrong in the future. Now, this is me at my best self because like, well, and there's a saying that like depression is thinking about yesterday and anxiety is thinking about tomorrow.
Hmm.
And like that's super simplified, by the way, guys. But like that's when I like cut off my futuristic planning because so much seems unknown. Like it's like really bad for my mental health. I need to be seeing the vision of what's going to happen even in the near future, like this weekend and next month and next year, kind of at all times, or else I lose like all motivation to work
Mhm.
or function as a human being. Like it's very like tied into like positivity for me as the future focus. And also, I mean, you can see the strength like in my stories from my childhood. Like trying to think of one that's not too personal to share. But a lot of my childhood was spent thinking like when I grow up I'll do this, or when I can do this I'm going to do this. Like I got a job the minute I had my learner's permit when I was 15 and a half. I had a job. And then like the minute I could go to college, I like moved away and went to college. I moved out of my house like the minute I graduated high school. That summer I lived outside the house because that's I had been planning that for years and years and like thinking ahead. So I don't know if it's like a natural strength or if it's an outgrowth of like my childhood like wants and desires, but like once you get in the habit of like always thinking like okay in 4 or 5 years. And actually the funny thing about futuristic is it made me like a total killjoy in my teens and 20s because in your teens and 20s, your brain just thinks about today. And so you just take action for today. And I was always thinking about 5 to 10 years. So I'd be like, why are you going to date that guy? He's obviously a jerk. You're not going to marry him. Like, why are you going to go to that party instead of studying tonight? Because obviously the point of life isn't to party. Which is like, I was very, like, very, very, very future focused, which I think is also why achiever came up so high in my strengths when I was in college.
Yeah.
And it's been great for my business and actually great for me to go along with activator because I help other people see their future possibilities. Sometimes, and you know this from talking to me about my business plans, if I get too bogged down in the next strength, which is strategy, which is like, okay, how am I going to implement this? I'm like, it's all too overwhelming. Like, I just want to keep thinking about the future, but my brain takes everything and figures out what is the best, most effective, quickest, most profitable way to enact this.
Yeah.
And so, like, you'll be like, hey, you could do this with a starship. And I'm like, okay, but how would I deliver that to them? Like, what is the software I'd use? And how am I going to connect this software to that software? And you're like, well, wait, just like think about if you want to do that first. I'm like, wait, but I gotta know the strategy for how I'll do it. And
Yeah.
I don't think about any product or class until I think about the strategy for how I'm going to market it and the strategy for who it's for. Like, and this, like, even like running errands with Jay, I'll be like, well, wait, we should do them in this order because that's most effective. You're going the wrong way. It's very annoying. But it's great when it comes time to like when we took our trip to England, we only had like we're gone for 14 days, but we're really only there for like 10 days. And I planned it so we got to do a lot more stuff than if my strategy brain hadn't like figured out when should we go where and
Yeah.
like what order and what trains and all of that.
No, that makes sense. Sometimes I wish I could be more future thinking. Like I have a really hard time like just like I have no idea what I'm going to do next year. Like I have a hard time. Like I don't make 5-year plans. Like it's and it's not just like that. It's like almost seeing the big picture. Sometimes
Yes.
I can't see the big picture. I'm just like bogged down in the day to day and I'm making this and I'm doing this course and I'm selling this thing and like if you were like, why are you doing those things? Or like, what's the big picture here? I'd be like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm just doing these things now.
Right. Definitely. Like it is helpful and it's like you said it's one of those things with strengths that you just think like well everybody does that. Like if you have a business of course you're thinking about the future and where you want it to go, but in reality no. And this is why like when I made the map making process which I know I keep talking about that book but just because it's got a lot of like it was a culmination of like a lot of studying both myself and other people.
Hmm.
And one of the things is you first make like your big goals and plans and dreams so then you can set your goals because like half the people will just set short-term goals with no idea of how it slots into what they really want. This is
Yeah.
one of the things when we first started working together, right? You're
Yeah.
like you were focusing on YouTube subscribers. And when we finally got to like but what are the big things you want in your life, it was like fun,
Yeah.
right? And so that like launched some other things you might not have done because you realized like bigger futuristic picture, the subscribers don't matter as much as this other stuff I want.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a great book. It's Map Your Business. You can get it on Amazon. It's perfect for the new year. So if you have trouble like setting kind of big picture goals that are more about like what you want to feel and that kind of thing, and then breaking it down into smaller actions, you should definitely check it out.
Thank you. It's one of those things that I feel like is from like it gets all of my strengths together, the like creating because it was created over years, like and
Yeah.
then all put together in a print book. So
No, I
yeah, whenever I
remember
think about
chatting about it like when you came over to the UK and you were like, "Oh, this is so overwhelming." And I was like, "No, like it's not overwhelming. Just do it." Like cuz
right,
you were like, "Oh, I want to change this. Oh, I'll have to change this." And we were like, "No, it's fine the way it is. Just do it." We
right.
were so
And see,
bogged into the details.
exactly, and that was like I kept thinking like, what is a strategy of getting it printed and distributed?
Yeah.
Like, how is it going to get into people's hands? And you were like, just put it in a PDF. You can figure that out.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I need to know like, so it's part of the like futuristic and strategic like sometimes like overwhelm each other, like they'll
Mhm.
push each other down, or when I'm thinking about the future I get too into how everything is going to work out. Like before we got the baby I wanted to talk to Jay about like who would take what night shifts and how, and I gave him like five options, right, like different strategies and pros and cons for each, and like into the third option he was like, we can't keep talking about this. This is not, you're just overwhelming me. Like, I don't understand what you're saying because you're saying so much, which is just, that's classic Tara. But that's all of those things, right? Like, I was trying to activate us to get us to like make a decision. I was thinking about the future. I had strategies. Like, I wanted it to be a group decision between the two of us. Like, I wasn't just going to lay down the law.
Right.
So, those are my strengths. And realizing those strengths, though, have really helped me. Um, when I think about like new things I'm going to do in the business, I can ask myself like, does this feature these strengths, or how can I bring these strengths to bear on this situation? So something that maybe is not as much fun or that I have been avoiding doing, like, am I going about it the wrong way? Right? Like,
Mhm.
am I not like letting myself dream about the future enough, or am I not letting myself like create multiple strategies? Because the thing about all these strengths is, like you said, you can see them as weaknesses, you can see them as things that are holding you back. So if you try to keep yourself from focusing, like, your business is just going to struggle. Or if
Yeah.
you kind of tried to squash that competition and you just wanted to um like, oh, I don't want to be a competitive person, like, your business isn't going to do as well, you're not going to grow as fast because you can
Yeah.
use that to grow faster.
I think it also helps you see how you could use those skills to help other people. Like people would want to hire you to like look at their businesses and help them look to the future and help them strategize, especially if those aren't their skill set.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and that's for you guys. You can go to stringsfinder.com. You can take the test. You can check out this book. It's an old book. I got it at a used bookstore for $3. Um, I don't know if you had said this earlier. doTERRA on their website, actually, whether you use their essential oils or not, they have a whole thing they created. It's under the Empowered You section, where there's a video that talks about how you can use each of these strengths in your business. So, and it would apply to like any business. I've watched a couple of the videos, they apply to anything. They also created this really excellent workbook, that once you know your strengths, you can do the workbook to plan your business around your strengths. So, I've like filled out half of it, and I was filling it out both for TS and my doTERRA business, and it totally, I could apply it to any business. I was kind of like, want to start using this with my students because it's a great like tool for exploring how you can build a business based on your strengths. So if you're feeling burnout or you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling like you're not good enough to have the business you want to have, it might be just that you're not bringing your strengths to the table.
Yes. Absolutely. So we will link that down below. And I wanted to say, like, if one of your strengths is kind of doing this all independently, then like getting the book and like getting Tara's Map Your Business is like an excellent way to go. But if you're someone who you feel like you need a little bit more guidance, like this is something that we're taught to do as life coaches, is to help people like figure out what they want and make the plan for it, which is probably why I'm so good at it. So if you feel like you'd want someone to kind of help you along this process or like just talk it out with you, because that's another thing sometimes people need, like they need a conversation to happen rather than just independently, then you can send me a message. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Jolie Creates. And just send me a message and we can talk.
Yes. So Jolie like does this, guys. She's like, and she's getting certified to even do it more officially, but she is my person to talk this out with. I totally recommend hiring her. I don't like to do one-on-one conversations. So whenever anybody emails me, I'm like, you need to talk to Jolie because Jolie is who I use. She's my life and business coach unofficially.
Yes.
So definitely message her. Like,
Yeah.
and is Instagram the best way? At
Yeah,
Jolie Create.
Instagram is because if you email me, I hate my email. I hate my inbox. So message me on Instagram. It's at Jolie Creates. I'll link it. Both of our Instagrams are linked down below.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you for talking about your strengths with me. This is fun.
It was. And we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.